Hello everyone, I'm Xiao Gang. Okay, let me explain how the architecture of this chapter is structured because it's really complex, to be honest. Since this requires one person to develop both the front part and back part, you need to know the front part, excellent front. You need to know how an excellent front part and excellent HGP are done, and you also need to understand the back. And this backend is not a C++ backend. It's an Unreal Engine C++ backend. You also need to understand databases, but in this chapter we won't cover databases. We will separate the database content out. If you're interested, you can check out our videos on P-Dan because this database involves OPOC from another instructor. Right, and for the database part, you can later replace it with any database and database connection plugin. And here, make sure the client does not directly connecting to the database. This is very dangerous because it directly accesses your database. It will directly crash your database, and then you're done for. Then you must go through a gateway or a relay server to do it. This controls access to the front lane. Because the database, the Circle language, itself has significant flaws, it is particularly easy, a language vulnerable to hacker attacks, especially when it comes to databases. It cannot be exposed to the external network. We need a logging server here for isolation. As for this architecture, it's just client and server. And actually, this is a bit difficult. Actually, if you can't quite understand, it's okay if you don't have Unreal Engine. Just knowing the general process is fine. This is our client. For the client, we have a client subsystem. Then when we call it, actually, we use this kind of call. We have all the interfaces encapsulated in the BP label, and we set up various proxies like this. Then when you, for example, do a registration, then you need to register it beforehand. I like to call it record info. Then using get here is also fine. Then we get our subsystem. The subsystem here must be obtained. If it's not obtained, the entire code has a problem. Your entire project settings have a problem. Then okay. Then within this subtest, these tentacle drawings are easy to explain. We mainly do this here. To call the correspondent actual CJS interface. This is our layer that connects the upper and lower parts. Then after connecting, for example, calling this registration interface, then we definitely need to perform some validation on the data and then hard-coded validation. Then here, in this place, you actually have such a process. Then after finishing, we actually send this HTTP request. And when sending the HTTP request, it is relatively simple. So it is equivalent to this square has a GUID, right? Some put this, our struct, converted into a JSON string. And this is an enum we used. This enum is mainly for convenient communication with the front end because we have a message type role. So here, we directly put this URL, write it here, and then just inject the data directly into it. Okay, after finishing here, we go back to our standalone program, go back to our server. The server is actually a standalone program. Of course, this standalone program, you can write it as a plugin, then it's like within your plugin. There is both a server and a client. We separate them here to make it easier for you to learn, and it's also easier to use this way, more flexible. Then later we write widget, quick server. When using a communication plugin like widget, client, we will merge them together. Yes, then this code can be ported into a plugin to create an HTTP server plugin. That would also work. And here, you can see we are still using our. We find our component. It should be a type of server target. You can see that the first part of this type is not much different from the example program we wrote earlier. Then here we read the local configuration. Then we create the server instance. Actually, this instance is an object. This object has some methods that can be bound to the engine's underlying layer, bound to the engine's underlying HTTP server. So these are the ones that handle its actual method. That is registering, verifying versions, or logging in, right? As for the overall binding, we'll talk about it later. Let's first go back to the outer loop. And here, after we have everything set up, we start listening to the world. And let it begin listening. Open up the ports for them and attach them. After attaching, we start the loop. To print it just advances our engine, and it advances frame by frame. When we destroy it, we just take our object and kill it, and note that here we finally exit. Then we mainly look at the code here. That is our server instance. It's called HTTP serial object. Its main purpose is actually to bind this method, this preset, the progress method, into it. You see, Right, this place is equivalent to we are under this path. After this port is read, we bind it to this place. Then it will enter this place. This place will get from the client here, even the one sent via HTTP information. This information must be during network transmission. It must be binary. It's just that we send it out. Before we transmit, it is a JSON, then we convert it to binary. Then here we receive binary, then we convert it to JSON. Then here we get this body. This body is what we previously on the client side transmitted this JSON body. Then we convert the data into what we need. Then we further distribute it because we want this interface to complete all the distribution. Then according to different tools, items, we need to use different implementations continuously after the implementation is done. We then take this information and write it back into this HTTP. We send the response over because you received this request. And now you send this response back. After sending it back, then on the server side right here, on the server side, when we set up HTTP, didn't we bind the callback? That's the unpriced receive one. So this is equivalent to the server sending information and our client receives it. So this is 1. This part is 1. This chunk is 1. This chunk is 3. Then the 2 in the middle, the server side of the 2 in the middle is this chunk. It is 2. So this is 1, 2, 3. This is the flow of one interaction. We call it HTTP request to response. This is called 1, 2, 3. So before 100 tweet, you definitely need to initialize. You need to initialize the agent. Apply for these access objects. Right. So these are the initialization process. So finally, in the process of sucking and purchasing, we essentially need to take these server-side initializations. That is, bring up this HTTP port and this server instance. Once shutting down, just cross this port on the server. Completely shut everything down. As for the client side initialization, currently speaking, there is probably much to initialize on the client side. Mainly, you need to bind this proxy. Bind the proxy properly when you use it. Then when it ends, just pay attention to sucking and recycling day by day. Okay, actually, our architecture is quite simple. Then we will develop it synchronously for both sides. Develop it synchronously for him, and we have some database related things here. We won't design them because we have some databases here. I'll block them out later. Everyone can go check them on another platform. Okay. These are some database related things. Okay, actually, this database has already been packaged and deployed to our cloud server. You can access it through the dual layer leader plitka. Try it out yourself. Right. I suggest you try it out first, then follow along with us to write it. Otherwise, if you're really new to this part is really extensive and difficult. We will take the server's effect and pull another server locally to show everyone. We'll pull this server open like this. After pulling it open, you can see some logs here. Hello, this is Xiaogang's server. So if we go local to load some configuration files, this configuration file is actually quite simple. It goes like this. It is on our epic. I am using UE50 here. That doesn't matter. We will develop it using the 5.4 source code. And then that's the standard. Wu-Tang 4 has already reached 5.4. 4, this doesn't affect anything. Updating or not doesn't really matter because we haven't yet touched the deeper layers of the engine. For the updates on the engine side, we are not affected. Okay, here we have a configuration called MyCircle. This is the configuration for the MyCircle plugin. It doesn't have much to do with us, okay? We mainly look at this configuration. This configuration is our server configuration. The server will read this configuration, and then these tokens and this information all need to be compared with the client. And at least we need to use one port, and this is how our server configuration is used. Okay, so the client-side configuration uses. I believe everyone should be very clear about this. For the client, the second step settings were explained to you. The second step settings can be seen here. We are in this public client section. We have there is a token here. There is a server IP, right? Then after our server is started, we can query it here. You can see if the result you get is this, then it is normal. Because why? Because we do not support this GET request. So it is normal here. You can remove this login, right? It is actually started. If we close it, you see, after we close it, you can see it should report a 404 not found. because there is none. Right, okay. Now we will explain the code architecture of this HGB-AO gang. This login command LoginServer. Clearly to everyone, this code could add up to 4,000 or 5,000 lines. Yes, thank you everyone.